they want to do Facebook ads. They want to do Facebook ads. They want to do Facebook ads. And why? Because they feel like that's going to be the answer to their business. And the short answer is maybe. The long answer is probably not, because they don't have any voice. There's no content. So they bring them in the theater, they sit them down, and they bring the curtains open, and it's an empty stage. It's an empty screen.
Welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the show about the art of crushing your goals and the discipline of loving your life while you do it. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and review. This is the best way to stay in the loop when we drop new content. This week, we have a very special guest. Mike Green is one half of Taylor Green Media, the dynamic duo behind the production of this very show. Mike is an experienced marketer with an expertise in psychographics. He gained this valuable knowledge after years of high-ticket marketing in incredibly challenging and competitive markets. 5 minutes into this conversation, you will see just how sharp and empathetic Mike is, and you will know exactly why he's been so successful. Please welcome my friend, Michael Green. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm well, and thank you for calling me very special.
You are very special.
Listen, I like the way this started.
That's good, man. You know, I before we dive in on what you do, what I will say is this podcast wouldn't exist if you didn't exist, right? So Mike Green owns Taylor Green Media. He's one part of Taylor Green Media. He also owns Scaling with Media, which is the company that helps me and inspired me to actually take the plunge and start making the Spear and Clover podcast. So kudos to you. Mike, if you could just give us sort of what you do, I know you have your fingers in a few different pies. So exactly what is it that you do?
Well, it's interesting you talk about the podcast and I think I had mentioned this to you maybe a week or so ago, that I had started a podcast 15 years ago.
It's crazy.
And it was early. Yeah. And I've always been kind of a curious marketing mind. Yeah. I was thinking for probably almost 30 years, I've been in the sales and marketing world in some way. My first job out the gate was a dirty telemarketer, hawking life insurance and credit cards. Wow. And all legitimate, but it was, it was the job that I first got into. And so I was exposed to sales and marketing at a really pretty early age. And I'm coming from very blue collar background, hardworking, all the great attributes that come with that. But marketing and sales was really a left turn for me and for my family. And so, but I went that path, started there just by default because that was the job that every other 16-year-old got in my town. Yeah. And have found myself at every point of my life deepening my sales and marketing career, or again, by default, just falling into something of that nature through every point. And I'm sure we'll go into some of that in the past, but here I am turning 45 this year and I'm as deep into sales and marketing as I've ever been. And fortunately have an opportunity to rub shoulders with great people like you that are certainly defining the new path. I mean, sales and marketing is as old as people scratching on cave walls, right? Sure. But there's always new iterations that happen. And I'm really excited about getting to know you better, getting to know Spear and Clover and what your mission is and how that's defining or redefining what marketing and sales means today, which I know you're not directly a marketing and sales company, but you are a marketing and sales person. Like you have a lot of deep knowledge when it comes to that, and not in a used car salesman type way. No offense to a used car salesman, but you have a natural magnetism. I use that word quite a bit with clients, that natural magnetism that people are drawn to. And that is the new sales and marketing. It's very individualized. It's a very personality based. It's very podcast based. And that leads us to where we are today in two ways. Number one, the company that I co-founded to help people like you and businesses like you in a situation where I'm on this podcast with you talking about my experience and your experience and how it all matches together.
Yeah.
That was that was a really long answer to you. I don't remember what the question was.
But I think it was, I'm fine. I think it was a long way of saying I'm fine.
Right.
Well, thank you for the kind words. What I would say is it's the medium, right? Like the medium is shifted. Like there's, I talked to Ryan Steenberg, whose episode came out a few weeks ago, and it was all about sort of market awareness. Like you're buying your avatar's awareness of that, the fact that they're being marketed to, right?
Yeah.
And there's something where I feel like good marketers, and I don't count myself as a very good marketer. I know good marketers, but I feel like good marketers are like 1 or 2 steps on the awareness curve ahead of time. Sure. And so something that feels gross to me is probably going to feel gross to everybody else in like a year, right?
Yeah.
And so it just seems like this medium, and one that you guys are really building a really cool platform on how to help. Because like you said, it's been going back to cave walls. So anybody can benefit from the medium. I don't think it's necessarily me or Spear and Clover or anything like that. Frankly, if anything, the problem with Spear and Clover is I'm not selling anything. I'm just here to here to have this conversation, right? But at the end of the day, the medium of using media in intelligent ways, we have now tools that didn't exist before. We have tools that are so broad and varied that now companies like yours can help to instruct people on, okay, how do you use this tool the right way? And how do you, rebuild the engine of your business in a different way, in a more efficient way than you may have had to do in the past. So,
and it's interesting. And one thing I was thinking about just this morning on that topic is we have a lot of people that come to us and say, I want to do this one thing. I want to do this thing that they perceive as going to be the magic bullet for their company. And for a long time, and even to today, I just had a conversation yesterday with somebody that they want to do Facebook ads. They want to do Facebook ads. They want to do Facebook ads. And why? Because they feel like that's going to be the answer to their business. And the short answer is maybe. The long answer is probably not, because they don't have any voice. There's no content. So they bring them in the theater, they sit them down, and they bring the curtains open, and it's an empty stage. It's an empty screen. And I think that is the thing that people, especially at the solo entrepreneur world that we're living in right now, is one of the biggest things they're missing. Is they have an amazing voice and a passion for what they're doing. Spear and Clover, you're the greatest advocate for Spear and Clover there'll ever be, because it was your idea and it was your mission and it was it's in your DNA. And I'm sure you will have a massive staff one day and all those things, but none of those people will be as committed and passionate as you. And that's what's cool, right? Is empowering and giving that founder, that creator, a voice, is marketing in its purest form, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I was going on sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was on a ruck march with your partner, Will Taylor, who's obviously going to be on the show at some point. And we had done jujitsu that day, and then we went for my 8 or 9 mile ruck with the dogs and carrying a log back and forth and just like really getting after it, right? And we sit down at the end of it, and I go, marketing is making you feel like you just did that without having to do that. Like the best of us, like the people that I respect, they do stuff like that every day, right? Yeah. Whether you talk about people in the military, you talk about elite athletes, you talk about just people that are out there just like really crushing, right? The Jocko Willinks of the world or whatever.
Sure, for sure.
And this was like this is like what somebody like you and I would do on a vacation. Like this is what we're doing to hang out, you know?
Right.
But at the end of it, I was like, what marketing is for that demographic is like feeling like you did that, or transferring that over to somebody else. Or maybe it's transferring over what it might feel if you were a fashion designer in Paris and came up with a great idea.
Sure.
Whatever it may be, whatever that particular thing is. But marketing is sort of like lending somebody the credibility of like what it would feel like to have that authentic experience that they're really looking for, right?
Yeah.
I want to take it back though, because I don't know enough about you yet. Tell me about your entrepreneur origin story. I mean, like, did you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur when you were a kid? I know that you kind of had a unique upbringing, so maybe lay that on us. Where are you coming from?
That's a great question. No, I don't have really anyone in my immediate circle that was an entrepreneur. And that has been something that I use as a badge of honor today, but also has been a self-awareness piece over my journey over the last 20 years, I would say. I started out, like I say, as right out of, it was still in school, on the phone, sales, smiling and dialing, doing that thing. My first real job was a marketing director for a 55 and older golf course community here in Southern Utah. And at that point, I had no idea what I wanted in life. I had I'd just gotten married. I was 21. I had recently returned from a service mission in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. And I had no clue. I knew that I was not a college person. I had no interest in going to college. I knew that I liked money, but didn't have very much of it. And I fell into an opportunity with a true entrepreneur at that stage. He is somebody that mentored me. We just talked about, mentoring in your life before the podcast started, but he was my first big mentor and was a person that had taken risks and had lost hard, but had also won in a huge way. And I worked for him for 10 years.
Wow.
And I started there with, what can I do for you? Being an errand boy, to fell into the marketing position for that company. That happened to be in a time when the real estate market was really ramping up. And we developed that brand, that company, into the most successful golf course community in Utah. Wow. And it was massive. It was a huge experience. And I was the marketing person for that company. That was a $50 million a year company that I had no business in that position, but I was kind of a natural at it. Like, it made sense to me. It was a good path. And so over that 10 years, I continued to do my job. I learned a lot about market segmentation, as that particular product was a very defined market, as it was a retirement community. Mm-hmm. I learned about budgets and spending and return on investment. And it was really a powerful experience while trying to be a young dad and having our children and maintaining a relationship. And it was a pretty fast-paced, hard at times, but a huge education over that 10 years. At that about 10 years, I was starting to feel some restlessness. That was my first real job, and I had been in that market for so long. And one note about that was, when I started, that was when most companies didn't even have a website. Mm-hmm. I mean, that, just for perspective's sake, this is way before social media, again, before most companies had websites. And so I had the unique opportunity to learn marketing in a very traditional sense at that point. We got our leads by magazine advertisements and newspapers and TV ads, but then was there for the digital transformation. Mm-hmm. We talked about that a second ago. So I was there for 10 years. And then at that point, I started to think, you know what, I know a thing or two, and I'm ready to jump and start my own business. And so I did that. I walked in and told them that my time there was done, and I appreciate them. As a matter of fact, I send them an email every Thanksgiving to him to thank him for the role that he played in my life, still does today. And he encouraged me. He said, okay, I think you're ready too. Let's do it. And they got me started and sent me on my way, and were my very first clients. And it was awesome. It was a really unique experience. I don't know. Do you want me to keep going in my journey, or do you want me to stop there?
I want to hear more, but I actually have some questions about that. So it's funny, because my journey into sales or marketing, that particular world, has never been traditional. So it's like I had to learn as a function of trying to grow my businesses, right?
Yeah.
And so, typically that's, every problem that you have as a small business owner is easier if you're sitting on a big pile of money, right? And how do you sit on a big pile of money? You sell a lot of memberships or products or whatever.
Right.
And so I guess my question would be like, what are you doing day to day when you work for a $50 million company that has a pretty specific avatar in a nice, affluent state that's beautiful? What are you doing? Are you putting together, brochures? Are you working with, buying ad space? Tell me about what day to day is like. Because I knew people in college that went into marketing, and at that time, they would have gone into doing what you're talking about. And I always kind of wondered, like, gosh, what are they doing all day? Is it, because I feel like, I don't know. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it was all of the typical things that you would think, right? Yeah. When I would say the first couple of years, it was, okay, we have 10 billboards along I-15. What should they say? What should they look like? Okay, we've got a opportunity to be in a home show. Okay, how are we going to, what advertisements are we going to do there? And I would say the first couple of years, I spent a tremendous amount of money on my own education. That was really, we benefited because the market was changing. People were dying to get out of California. Mm-hmm. They were selling their houses for a ridiculous amount of money, and they were coming to pay cash. They didn't need me. I mean, it would market it itself. But I learned a ton. Now, the most important thing that I learned once I got those day-to-day tasks figured out is, wait a second, we have 1,000 people that have bought from us already that live in this community. Mm-hmm. Why do I, as a 23-year-old, why in the world would I think that I would know what they would care about, right? Like I could come up with a message and whatever, but it's appealing to my eyes. And I think that I learned two really important things. Number one, I learned that marketing is very subjective based on market segmentation. What looks great to my eyes, what sounds great to my ears, what feels great inside, what I think is going to motivate me to buy is probably drastically different than that 67-year-old coming from Los Angeles that wants to move to Southern Utah, because their perspective on the world is so much different than what mine was. And so I started to listen. I learned how to run a focus group. I started running focus groups within the community. I inserted myself into some of the clubs and advocated for them, say, hey, come to me. I'll build your program, make it look pretty, that kind of thing. And that made all the difference because I learned something that I say constantly to my clients all the time. I said, if you want to be a successful marketer, you have to be agnostic. And what I mean by that is you as a marketer can't be so swayed on one particular thing that you're not listening to the market. You have to be agnostic and be willing to leave your own personal beliefs and values and psychographic tendencies and go to where the market's at and meet them where they're at and speak to them how they want to be spoken to. And when I did that, when I learned that, and it was a really critical phase because what happened was that beautiful marketing or that beautiful market tanked. And it was 2007 and the real estate world crashed. And we went from building 300 to 400 houses a year to struggling to build 60. And our team went from 100 people on payroll to 25. I mean, it was a massive shift. And had I not understood that thing, had learned that principle of the importance of being agnostic as a marketer, we would have crashed and burned hard. And that, from the time that happened in 2006, 2007 to 2011, when I left, that phase was critical. And I made a difference during that phase because I had learned those things, because the market was no longer just going to give us sales anymore. I had to figure it out. And I did a few campaigns during there that to this day, I'm super proud of because they generated clear results for that company and got us through some really, really difficult times until the market corrected a little bit and went back through that cycle, right? So it was a critical phase.
That's so interesting. And so the questions I have on follow-up there is where did you find leverage? What were you able to do? Because I've heard interesting stories. I was getting out of the Army and then in school during that crisis. So I was very fortunate that I was not involved in either running a business or really even any business. So where were you able? I've heard really interesting stories on how people were able to build businesses or save businesses, during that time by being very creative. So what were the things that you did? And then kind of as part of that is, what's the feedback loop? What's the time like? Are you tracking things in spreadsheets? How quickly do you know when you put something out, whether or not it's going to come back quickly? Because I'm from the generation of, it's on my spreadsheet. It's in as soon as Facebook, my ads are live or Instagram or whatever I'm doing, I know right away. So what were you doing and how were you tracking the success of that?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. So one of the very first things that I learned about and found the importance of is figuring out which numbers actually mattered. We were always really good about tracking, and we had a typical plan development cycle, right? We would bring them in, they would go to the sales office, they'd get their nice warm cookies, and they would meet the salesperson, and then they would go visit the 10 model homes, right? So that was kind of the cycle. And my job, I always thought, was to just get them in the door, right? And the more people I could get through that door equaled success. That was my primary KPI, was who registered at that front desk. What I learned was, while that number is important and needed to be tracked absolutely, I learned that I would rather have 10 people that were actually qualified and interested than 100 that were just there for the free hamburger. Because I ran a lot of free hamburger events because it drew people like flies. And we had the luxury in St. George. There was a lot of tourism there anyways. So it's pretty easy to get them to walk through the sales office. But that didn't mean that they were qualified. And so what I did was I started doing campaigns that were a little more targeted. Now, again, this is pre-Facebook ad targeting at median income, all of those things. I started looking at what I could control and how I could target. I had read a book by, I can't think of the name of it. But it was on market segmentation. And I learned about median income. I learned about education level. I learned about personality dynamics. And I started targeting people based on lifestyle events, such as, do they love to golf? Do they like the outdoors? Are they in a certain type of industry than another? And I started targeting like that rather than just trying to take just the widest sweep I could get and throw out a broad net. And when I did that, we were able to have much more qualified conversations, and the realtors loved me a lot better because now they were having great conversations every time somebody walked through the door. Our overall numbers dropped. Our traffic numbers, what we called them, they actually dropped, but our sales were much more solid, and they were more solid individuals that were much more qualified because of that change. And that was one of lots of metrics that we studied. I started to really get dialed into ROI, mostly because my bosses were, how much are you spending and what is our result? Whereas before, our bank account was so deep that it didn't really matter. I couldn't spend enough, right? I was putting stuff out, but really not a lot of accountability. But we went to, okay, now we need to be accountable for every penny, and we've got to make sure that every nickel comes back a dime when we put it out there. And so I started tracking our budgets, our ROI, and those were the two primary things that I knew that I could control 100%. How qualified somebody walked through that door, and then how my money was the company's money was being spent, and what return we were having on that. Now, the day that Google Analytics went live was like a birthday, man, because the amount of data that we could now get, again, this is fast forwarding a couple of years, got a great website, started doing things. When I learned about metrics of how long are they spending on my website, what page are they leaving? Like, where do I lose them, right? Or what page did they come in on? Was it a blog post we wrote, something like that? When I figured out how I could really track those things, it changed everything. And I became a Google Analytics junkie, man. I had all the time. And when they announced real-time analytics, my head exploded, right? Because it was like, oh my gosh, this person in New Jersey is looking at us right now. This is the page they're on. I mean, it was incredible, right? And so it took it to a whole different level. And I would say that experience of metrics has driven everything else that I've done since that point. And the great part about it is metric measurement has gotten so much better and more accessible every year, and will continue to do so in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're making it easier to understand too.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what I'm hearing, this is so interesting. This is the most lit up I've seen you, which I love. It seems like you're just a big walking sensor. Like, it seems like your superpower is the ability to just listen and observe. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I think, I would say something that's interesting to me that I preach constantly that I don't know that always lands for people, especially when I'm talking to new business owners, is the importance of psychographics. Yeah. And most people are not familiar with that term. They understand what demographics are, and they're very important. But I personally feel like psychographics are the magic bullet, the most important thing for anybody that claims themselves to be a marketer. If they don't understand the psychographic profile of the people that they're targeting, they're not a marketer. They're just swinging for the fence. It's such an important thing. And I feel like that my superpower. That's too boastful for me to feel comfortable saying that, but that's a topic that's been very interesting for me to learn and to be better at. And I've applied to every business I've been involved with from that point on.
So for the listeners at home, and secretly for me, what are psychographics? And give us sort of the rundown.
Great question. Yeah, I say the word and it makes my mom super proud because not a lot of people know what that word means. But let's start from the basis of demographics. Everybody knows what demographics are, right? They're your age, your income, your marital status, where you live, all those things, right? Like all the things that make us who we are. Psychographics are, how do you think? What do you value? What motivates you to a buying decision? Mm-hmm. What do you repel? Like, what is it that is a core belief inside of you that's going to cause action? And a great illustration for that is my beautiful wife of 22 years is from Southern Utah. And we have 3 kids. And she goes throughout her life and makes certain decisions based on her upbringing, her environment, our religious beliefs, lots of things, right? All the things that drive her core values. Mm-hmm. Now, if I take I'm not going to say her name, her age, a woman of the same age, white from New Jersey, I keep going to New Jersey, is she going to make all those same decisions? She looks exactly the same, right? From the outside, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, except for my wife is far more beautiful. But you wouldn't be able to see a difference until you dove into their psychography. What is their upbringing? What is that thing? What is the hill that they're willing to die on? Where does their line in the sand? Where is it at? What is it that gets them so excited that they're willing to spend money or they're willing to commit to something? When you, as a business owner, or more specifically as a marketer, when you understand that about a person, you're at a completely different level of being able to communicate to them. Uh-huh. And again, that goes back to the importance of you being agnostic as a marketer, because you have to be willing to take that person and say, okay, this is what they value. This is how I'm going to apply my offer, my product, my service, whatever it is. This is how I'm going to communicate that thing to this person in order for them to see the value of what I truly have. And that's a very marketing, transactional way to think of it. And that same thing can be applied to communication, to relationships, to anything, right? The better you understand the psychology of that person, the better you're going to be at putting your good foot forward in communicating to that person and moving that person down a path where you can see and feel and understand them at a different level. In my mind, that's marketing. That's human communication in my mind, so much further than demographics. While demographics are important, it's a whole other level.
So are there any books or minds that you can think of that were really influential in developing that for you? Because I'm sure a lot of folks at home like me are going to be sitting here going like, wow, this is something that I haven't put a lot of time and effort into. Yeah. Is there any resources you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of moves to the next stage of my business where that got taken so far. So I kind of fell into that, understanding the 55 plus crowd, right? Just by desire to understand them and what they wanted. That was where I started. When I left that job and started on my own entrepreneurial journey, I got involved with a great business partner of mine. His name's Scott McDonald. He is a far more educated and individual. He's now retired, but he's still my partner in Dr. Demographics. He put the word to it, right, of what it actually was. I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was beyond demographics. He taught me actually what psychographics are and has been my mentor in that for many years now of identifying how that applies specifically. Now, he was in the dental, medical, veterinary space, helping businesses or helping doctors place their practice in a part of the country that they wanted to, so demographically, and then offered a whole layer of psychographic understanding of the people that actually live there. So if we could get that dentist, first, let's say, to be agnostic in their marketing, to decide, okay, I'm going to place my practice right here in Chicago or wherever, to understand that group of people that lived right around that practice, understand them at a demographic and psychographic level, they're likely going to be a better, bigger success. Their marketing is going to go further. And so that has really become our mission at Dr. Demographics, is to provide that for our clients. And we've done that for thousands and thousands and thousands of doctors over the years that I've been there. Scott's done that for over 30 years very successfully. So that took it to a whole new level and identified it of what it actually is for me. And I've just kind of taken it from there.
How have you found it imposing agnosticism on an entrepreneur? I know that dentists or doctors maybe aren't the most entrepreneurs, right? It's kind of like a function of that job is either work in a hospital or in a small practice, right? But have you found it difficult? Because as an entrepreneur, I can tell you that the struggle for us has sometimes been, as a coach of other entrepreneurs, has sometimes been like, hey, I know that you feel this way, but this will work better, right? As long as we can find it within your voice. So has that been a struggle? How's that gone?
It's a huge struggle because I don't think that any entrepreneur goes into it thinking that. The reason that they start something is because they're passionate about it, right? They feel very passionate about their mission, their product, their service, whatever it is, and which is where it starts. And I would never do anything to dampen that piece. But usually when I get the call, it's when, this product's not working, right? Like we don't have any sales. I need something. And that's where they start grasping for that silver bullet of Facebook ads or whatever, right? Because they think that that's going to be the answer. And it's not typically. The answer is they don't understand who they're trying to sell to. And so it's a process and a conversation that I have, I think, with pretty much every single one-on-one client that I'm personally working with, is that you're passionate about your project. Awesome. Go deep in that, double down on that. But when it comes time to sell your passion, to sell your product, your service, whatever that is, to another individual, you have an obligation to yourself and to them to understand them. And that's easy to say, very, very difficult to do, because I think entrepreneurs feel like they have to leave their own passion behind and put something out there that they feel like is not truly them in order to sell that product. Now, I think that there are some, you mentioned some great ones. Jocko's a great one that has such magnetism, right? That people want to be like him and want to have a piece of him. And maybe not as big of an issue for him as it is for the lock, stock, and barrel entrepreneur that I'm working with. But it's still a critical piece to long-term success and communicating the value of your particular product or service to your clients.
Yeah. And, shout out to Jocko, by the way. I'd love to have you on, Jock. But honestly, what if you're the best, he's the best at something that many people admire, right?
Sure.
And for those people who don't know, Jocko Willink is a motivational speaker. He's got a great podcast. He's also, makes products all in America. He's a great guy. He was for many years a SEAL team member.
Yeah.
And leader.
The book Extreme Ownership changed my managerial life.
Yeah, me
Absolutely.
too. But, to that point, though, I guess my follow-up question that would be, okay, great. You have those folks that just get it and they walk through the world and there's this reality distortion field around them and things just bend to their will. And that's great. I love when I run into folks like that because you can do so much, right?
Yeah.
But would you say that you've had more success with Dr. Demographics with folks that are prosperous or folks that really need you or they're going out of business? Like, have you been able to be successful? Have you seen any trends there? Because it seems like you'd almost be better with somebody that's like, I'll do anything.
Yeah. Desperation does an amazing thing for people's mindset. They're willing to try anything.
Yeah.
We have a lot of success. And to be fair, a large majority of our clientele are bright-eyed, bushy-tailed doctors right out of school. Okay. That the world has not scarred them yet. Business has not scarred them yet. And so we play a very, very important role in providing them with consultation and advice of where to place their practice. But the most valuable work that I feel like that we do is helping those in those desperation moments where they have a little humility and they have a little willingness to understand and see themselves as a marketer. There's a lot of aha moments when we have those conversations because they typically are in that situation because demographics alone was not enough to be successful. And I always tell them this, I give them this advice of, hey, you can be successful here. Absolutely. But just having an open sign in the window is probably not going to do it. Either your competition understands things better than you or has more experience than you. You're going to have some USP that's going to draw people to you. And it's really easily done in the dental medical field. It's done horribly most of the time. And so to stand out's not that hard. But we have a lot of desperation calls and conversations And so I feel like the best work we do is in those situations.
Yeah, when you talk about demographics, it reminds me of so much of, as somebody that coaches brick and mortar gym owners in the past, I find that I'm talking to me all the time. But I'm talking to me from Portland, Maine, and then I'm talking to me from Miami, Florida, then I'm talking to me from, San Francisco, or me from, Portland, Oregon, and or Canada or Australia or England or wherever. And it's just that was such an eye-opening moment in my life, and one that has changed me permanently, was to sit across a Zoom typically or a table and talk to somebody who, if I grew up where he grew up, that probably would be about what I would be like. Right? We're into the same things. We have similar characteristics, similar background, whatever. But it was just so interesting. So that psychographics thing, I can assure you, will be on my Google history here shortly.
Well, what's interesting, Jason, is that, and I think you had this misconception of me early on, I'm not a doctor. I'm
that's
not
right.
a dentist.
I thought you were a dentist.
Yeah. I'm not any of those things, right? And so, but what I am is a marketer. And one of the things I tell those doctors during desperation stage is, you better start thinking of yourself as a business owner. You better start thinking of yourself as a marketer. Because if you just think of yourself as a clinician, you will be average or out of business very, very soon. But when you start managing your business, when you start viewing yourself and your staff as marketers, everything changes. Everything changes about the way that you communicate with your patients, the way that you treat them, the way that you deal with conflict and struggle, billing problems, all of the things. Everything changes when you start thinking of yourself as a marketer.
Yeah, you're kind of like a wild card, right? You're whatever you need to fit in there. That's very interesting.
And when it comes to that, when I can get them to see themselves as that, now we're driving, because I'm a marketer. Now we're talking, right? I don't know how to do root canals. I don't know how to do dental implants. But I do know how to market. And so when we're on that same plane, now we can talk. Now we can make a strategy.
So you have this knowledge. You kind of got put through the fire during the downturn in 2008, and you decide to go off on your own. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't strike me as the, typical burning, passionate, like CEO type of person. And so what inside you, what was going on when you decided to go off on your own? Were you nervous? Were you afraid? Were you excited? Did you have structures in place? I'm always fascinated by people that view risk differently than me, or view the entrepreneurialism differently than me. Because for me, it's always been like, well, yeah, I'll just go do that, and then I fail at it, or I don't fail at it, whatever. But I never even think about it. Like it's more like, is this a good idea that I'm super excited about? And so for you, you have this experience. What was it like deciding to go out on your own and do your own thing? And how did you embolden that in yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was exciting. I'm not going to say that I was nervous, mostly because I didn't know what was about to hit me. I had no idea. I was walking away from a very good structure, a well-managed company, one where I was respected, had a beautiful office with a beautiful view, had a staff, had all the things in place. Payroll was always paid on time, all the things. And I walked away from that and kind of assuming all those things were just going to fall into place. I had no idea the amount of refining and challenge and sacrifice that I was about to experience for myself, which is one thing, but more importantly, the amount of sacrifice that I was going to force my family, my wife and 3 kids, to go through, not for a short time, but for years. I look back on that time with a lot of emotion, Jason. There are physical, geographic places that I still go to today that have so much memory associated with them that breaks my heart. I left that company and set up my website and did all the stuff and was selling my personality, my knowledge, me as a consultant, as a coach. And again, this was before everybody and their dog was a consultant and a coach. And it was okay. Like I did okay, but nowhere near where I needed to do financially, house payment, car payments, nowhere near. And that brought me to a desperation stage where it was no longer, man, this is fun. This is an entrepreneurial journey. I'm living my dream and everybody, my family's proud of me and all of those things, to we need diapers. We need to make the house payment. We have no money, like no money. And what are you going to do? Because nobody's coming. You know, the great Garrett White phrase of nobody's coming to save you. No one is coming to save you. To this day, I have scars in my arms from the needles donating plasma for $20. And why did I do that? Because we needed food. And I could have asked for help. You know, I've never been good at that. I could have asked my family, could have asked my church, could have asked, you know, the government, whoever. And I had too much pride to do any of those things. But it was hard. It was dark and horrible, but it was the most valuable thing that I had to go through in order for me to be in the position that I'm at today. The most valuable, the most important. I would not, Jason, it breaks my heart to think about my kids and my wife and again, what I put them through. I would never want to do that again, but I would go through that again if I could, if I knew that I was going to learn what I had to learn to take myself to the next level. Almost everything about me as a business owner today was battle born in that time. I learned that I didn't need to rely on anybody to make money except for myself. I can make money myself. I learned that I have an ability to communicate and people listen to me. I learned that I can harness that hard work ethic that my dad taught me and apply it to a completely different world than what he lived in, and can utilize that to move myself forward. And brick by brick, we built our way back. That led me to one opportunity to the next, led me to my partnership with Scott McDonald and Dr. Demographics, which continues today, which led me to meeting Will Taylor, my partner in Taylor Green Media, and brick by brick. And Jason, I'm still building bricks. I'm still putting bricks in there. But man, it is the story of my life, is that time. And I draw upon that every day.
Today's show is brought to you by High Level CRM. High Level is an all-in-one platform designed to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses without the need for multiple softwares or an IT team. Not only does their easy-to-use software allow you to track and manage your leads throughout each phase of the relationship, but it also allows you to build funnels, track stats, and more. Guys, I sat down and added up the cost of software I was able to replace with just one app, and it was over $1,000 per month. Because this is an all-in-one application, I also save a ton of headaches connecting apps and building automations, and the team at Go High Level does a great job of getting you started quickly and easily when you sign on. I cannot more highly recommend these guys. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners get a free 14-day trial of High Level CRM for themselves. Click the link in our show notes to support the show and get started on your free 14-day trial today. I'm super excited that today's show is brought to you by the Global School of Entrepreneurship. Most practicing entrepreneurs cannot take 2 years away from their growing business to attend a full-time campus-based program or spend every weekend away from family and business for a couple of years. Finally, there's an accredited program specifically designed for you to work on and grow your business while completing your MBA. The GSE MBA complements the needs and schedules of someone actively engaged in an entrepreneurial venture while still covering the accredited curriculum expected from any MBA program. The Global School of Entrepreneurship offers a unique offering called the Mastermind to MBA program. It consists of 10 students who work together in a forum-style cohort and meet every other week for a year. The GSE MBA helps you develop skills in critical thinking and strategic planning. Students also develop competencies in leadership, decision-making, and communication with both employees as well as the important stakeholders in your business. You will be exposed to world-class academics and fascinating guest lecturers. You'll work on your business while working in your business. Students are guided by real-world entrepreneurs with decades of experience starting and scaling businesses just like yours. Best of all, I'm beyond proud to announce that the Global School of Entrepreneurship has agreed to offer one Spear and Clover listener a scholarship to join an upcoming Mastermind to MBA cohort. They are looking for someone just like you to bring a unique perspective to the program, and they are accepting applications right now. To learn more and to apply, simply go to www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Don't miss this opportunity to level yourself up and surround yourself with other like-minded entrepreneurs just like you. Once again, to apply for the GSE MBA Spear and Clover Scholarship, simply visit www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Today's show is brought to you by Scaling with Media. I mean, literally, like if it weren't for the folks at Scaling with Media, you would not be getting this. Scaling with Media is a truly revolutionary company for any entrepreneur who wants to reach a larger audience without taking on the years of experience necessary to master the required skills. These guys do it all. From helping you develop your creative plan to editing, sourcing content, copywriting, ads management, and way more. Whether you're looking to launch a YouTube channel or podcast, or you just want to scale your business out to more eyeballs, these guys are the absolute best one-stop shop. But that's not all. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners who sign up for their brand launch package will receive a free professional grade studio kit that I'm actually recording right now on. The studio kit includes a professional microphone, stand, lighting, and headphones, and is worth well over $500. Take action now by going to scalingwithmedia.com/spear and claim your free studio kit. Again, that's scalingwithmedia.com/spear, scalingwithmedia.com/spear. Now back to the show. Tell me about your wife and your relationship through all that.
Yeah. Man, it's a tough one. Tough for me to hold it together, I should say.
Well, it's up to you, man. I don't mind.
No.
But I know that story doesn't happen without a supportive family.
Absolutely. And I don't know how many times I've said to myself or have been consulting an entrepreneur who does not have a supportive staff or supportive wife, a spouse, I was going to say.
Yep.
I don't know how they do it, honestly. I have no advice for them because without that piece, there is no way that I can see a path that I would have gone through it. My wife was, and you're experiencing it, you've got a new baby. Mm-hmm. It's awesome, but it's so hard, and my wife was home stranded with no car because I usually had the car. We had one car with the kids. Jason, my kids, I've got two daughters in college and my son's in high school. My kids are amazing. My kids are smart. They are hardworking. They are kind. They are honest. They have a ton of integrity. And all of that is attributed to that time as young kids with my wife. She was able to manage them, teach them, love them. I'd say shield them from the pain that we were going through, and allowed me and supported me to jump off any cliff that I wanted to jump off and take the family. I think that I am still understanding a level of gratitude that I have for her for following me down that path and supporting me. Not one time, Jason, not once did my wife say, you know what, let's don't do this anymore. Let's just go try to get your job back or go, not one time. I'll be forever grateful to her for that time. I can't even put words to it, the gratitude that I have. And frankly, the love that I have for my wife. She's my best friend. She is my confidant. She is my greatest supporter, my greatest fan. She is the person that I can go to with anything, have any kind of a conversation with. She is my mentor. She's my everything. Our relationship brings so much happiness into my life, fulfillment into my life. Like I say, we'll be 23 years married this year, and there's no other path for me.
It's funny because this has come up on the podcast before. It's something I'm thinking about a lot right now because we just recently had our first daughter, Lucy. And that is sort of like, a lot of people have spoken about this, obviously, but really interesting, dynamic people come out of really tumultuous and challenging situations.
Yeah.
Right? And I think sometimes that means like you were abused or you were super duper poor or you really overcame, these horrific type of things. But I think if you're planning it, it's not to plan like I'm going to abuse the kid for 4 years. No, like, you don't want to plan that. Yeah. But what I could say is you hit so much in there that is answering this already. But could you imagine having such a great relationship with your wife? Could you imagine having like a depth of knowledge if everything was just great? Right. Yeah. And so maybe in the absence of like, sacrificing everybody's happiness in the hopes that you get like a Serena Williams to come out of it or something, which is actually a bad example because her dad was great, but whatever, whoever that might be. Maybe in the absence of that, it's like exposing your family to pushing the chips in, relying on one another, being kind of exposed to and vulnerable to one another, and then seeing the ascension from that, seeing their mom and dad going through tough times, seeing their mom and dad overcoming problems, and then well, gosh, now the Green family's doing pretty good, and you got 2 kids in college, you got a kid in high school. And so maybe because they've seen these challenges overcome. So now you've told that part of your story. Somebody that's listening to this, I hope we're reaching dozens of listeners now, Mike. So I hope you understand this could be a pretty big bump in your career. But now somebody at home listening to this has not yet made that plunge, because I think hopefully that this podcast makes its way to people that are still thinking about it. For me, I feel every time I have a new person that I'm responsible for. So I didn't get married when I was 21. I got married when I was 35 or 36. And as soon as I had a wife, I felt like I was not able to be as much of a renegade as I had been previous. And then as soon as I had the baby, man, that magnified that times 10. But to somebody sitting there now that maybe is married with young children and maybe does have a corporate gig that's slowly stealing their soul, would you recommend that they go for it? Or would you recommend that they don't? What's your advice to that person?
Yeah, that's hard to answer, right? Because that is casting a wide net over everybody in their situations. I can tell, from my perspective, I was not prepared financially, was not prepared emotionally. The knowledge and the business depth that I thought that I had was nowhere near what experts would say that you should have in place before you make the leap. Could I have prepared myself better? Could I have increased my bank account, some of those things, so the pain could have been lessened? Absolutely. But I probably would still be doing that today, saying, well, when I'm 50, I'm going to be ready and I'm going to jump, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that where does that end? Like, at what point do you jump off the cliff? And that's that's the wrong analogy.
No,
but at some point, you are going to walk into the unknown. You are. And so if not today, then when? And it doesn't necessarily, for me, it was leaving the comfort of a fantastic job where I worried about very little. That's what it meant for me. I had a supportive wife. I had a foundation, a lot of other ways that other people maybe don't have. And so that was my unknown, right? And that I had to step into. Maybe it's someone here listening today that wants to take that leap. Maybe they're in a terrible relationship. And that is the step of unknown that they need to step into before they ever talk about, starting their own business or whatever. Maybe they've got to take that hard step in their relationship. Maybe it's, financial. It could be a million things. What I do know is that everybody's story is different. But the other big thing that I know, Jason, is that adversity is a huge and a very, very important part of life. So important, because adversity is what makes us grow. And I believe that it is the biggest deception that we go through in our life, thinking that if I can just make a little bit more money, or if I can just get on that vacation, or if somebody else is in the White House, or if I get rid of my spouse and get a different one, then I won't have this adversity. I think that's a lie. Your situation might change. The definition of the adversity that you're currently go through may change, but adversity is the biggest constant in life. And I don't want anybody that's listening to this to get the wrong impression that because of, I'm not sticking needles in my arm anymore to give plasma, but do I have adversity? Absolutely. And so do you. And so does my neighbor who has a fantastic Instagram account that looks like they're living the dream.
Yeah.
Adversity is everything. I personally believe that, and this is my own beliefs, but I believe that that is our purpose in this life, is to go from one adversity to the next, to become better and better as an individual, spiritually, emotionally, everything. That is our progression, our whole purpose for being here. And so it feels reckless to say this, but bring it on.
Yeah.
Like, bring it on, because I'm doing work every single day in myself to be ready for whatever that next thing is. And I had terrible times, Jason. Most of them were financial, but they pale in comparison to a child with cancer or a lost spouse in a car wreck or some of the other things that the people go through, right? I would take challenges 1,000,000 times over that.
Sure.
And so, but one thing that I do know is that adversity is going to be a constant. And so for me, I take a 3-prong approach, I should say, on that. The first one is I am going to be prepared in any way that I can for whatever the next adversity is in my life. Quick story, and I don't want to take too much time with this, Jason, but I used to do triathlons and run marathons, that kind of stuff. And the first marathon I ever ran, I got some really good advice from a guy. And he said, about mile 15, they're just going to suck. And you'll seize up and be terrible and all the things. Mile 20, it's also going to be really hard. And then right at the end, it's going to hurt so bad, but you'll be close enough to the end that you'll just push through. But on mile 15 and at mile 20, you have to decide now, well, way before you run that marathon, how you're going to react. Because if you don't prepare for that, things are going to go badly, because you're allowing your mindset and your decision to be made at that moment rather than already deciding well before you start that race. And sure enough, mile 15, things started to suck. It's beautiful. The St. George Marathon is a beautiful run, like down through snow canyon. It's awesome. So probably got to be the most scenic one there is. Mile 20, I'm waddling along, body seized up, and it's hot. St. George is hot, and I was dying. And to make matters worse, the race organizers were like slowly driving by all of us lagging people at the end, and a big van with the side door was open. It was nice and air conditioned. They're like, hey, if you want to jump in, if you feel like you want to be done. And I'm like, what are you doing to me? What are you doing to me? And I didn't, Jason. Why? Because I had already decided before I went into that. And so my preparation was important. Second thing, and I don't want to lose anybody on this, but prayer is really important to me in my life. It is my tool. It is my place and my meditation and my ability to sync my soul and spirit to what I feel like my maker has for me in this life. It is to make my will and his will in conjunction so that I know why I'm going through that adversity. I'm going to try to recognize what that thing is. And then the last thing that I think is so important that's not done very often is to document yourself, your journey through a journal, through a podcast, a vlog, whatever it is, right? But to document that experience so you do actually learn the thing that you needed to learn, and you can help and become a mentor for other people as they're going through it. But the thing to not do is to be surprised when that adversity comes, because it's coming. It's coming for all of us, and it's going to keep coming till the day that we die. And it's that by design, in my opinion.
Yeah, my wife and I always talk about like what would we hope to pass on to our children. If we just pick one, the one I always say is the desire to keep learning. Like I always love learning things. So, nonstop. If I learn something new, that just leads me to 10 other things I can learn, right? But I think the second thing would be to love the struggle, to love the hustle and the struggle. I think it's so hard. It's not hard. And I think this is why people start businesses when they're young, right? Because you do so with nothing to lose and no other, great options. And so it's like, well, shit, I guess we're giving plasma today, right?
Right.
But the hard thing is like, hey, I'm making $250,000 a year. I'm going to go seek out struggle to push myself out of this cocoon and try and level up to the next level. And I think that that's really difficult for folks to get their head around. What motivates you? Like, are you currently seeking out struggle? Because, good friend Robin Lalonde was on the show talking about, elective suffering is such a good thing. For me, it's, been CrossFit and jiu-jitsu or rucking or whatever else. Like seeking out, like I want to inoculate myself to stress so that other things seem less stressful and I can kind of seek out the good, right? How do you seek struggle or adversity in order to kind of level up, or is that something that just kind of presents itself?
So when I look at the different areas of life, there's certainly certain areas that you can seek after the suffering a little easier. Like it's a little bit more straightforward than others, right? Like I don't know what kind of sadist you'd have to be to think I'm going to create struggle for my family or something like that. That one's tough. That one's kind of seems to just happen sometimes. And there are areas of my life at different times that I felt like were weak and some that were strong. I have been very fortunate in my relationships and my families. And so that's a strong point for me. That's an area that I work on all the time. And that's a category that's always ranks the highest for me. My spirituality has been to the depths, to the heights, and worked a lot and put myself through a lot of adversity in that to the point now where I feel like it's a strong area for me. It's a driving area for me. My business, we've talked a lot about that, from the depths to the heights, and can go much higher, excited about all the things that we're doing. So that's something that certainly you do take on some adversity there. My health has come at the expense. And as I mentioned before, I used to be super active, did some CrossFit, not very much, not nearly as much as some of you guys, but was a big into triathlons, did some really hard races, that was a big focus at a time. That came at the expense. And that one in my mind, or maybe it's just because it's what I'm focused on for the second, is where this moment is where I'm putting myself in the most adversity. And so that led me to Will, my partner. And it's funny because we really are, I don't know that anybody would put us in the same room together. He's a fantastic partner. He's a great friend, but looks like he should come out of a magazine. And, I'm at the back of a want ads, more of a kind of guy, so
I think compared to Will, I think we all are, but
but it's a great compliment of each other. And so it's great, but that's an area that I am seeking after some refinement and doing some hard work. That's extremely uncomfortable for me. And so in that area for me, I'm seeking after the adversity. Now go back to, and a lot of people in my world, in our world, I think that they have business figured out. I think they have money figured out. They probably have their physical health, especially in your world, Jason. A lot of people have their health figured out. A lot of them don't have their family figured out. Terrible relationships. A lot of really successful business people that I've helped and mentored over the year have terrible relationships. They have the others figured out. And so they do probably need to seek after some hard things in their relationships to fix that piece. And again, I go back to Garrett. I think he's got some real brilliant things that he says. And you want to live the everything life, have all those areas functioning and successful. And that's hard to do. And I think very few people accomplish it, but I'm working at it every day to get that last category functioning for me.
Yeah. I think about like a three-chambered heart. I've been thinking about a little bit. Like you have your business or your professional life, you have your, family and friends, and then you have sort of what's between your ears and your body and your life. Right. Right. And it feels like it's a zero-sum game. Whereas if you get more in one of those chambers, and it's taking it from somewhere else, right? And so with that said, how much time and effort and have you put between the ears? Like how well do you know yourself? What do you do to better know yourself, to better find balance within yourself? Because it seems like if I've been paying attention, which I hope I have, it seems like you're a great listener. It seems like you've really done a ton of things to go out and achieve, but you've also sacrificed on behalf of your family and then worked on behalf of your clients. And so how much time do you dedicate and devote to, self-care, self-understanding, things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I figured out a way a couple years ago. I live a 13-month year. I found I created another month in the course of a year. And how do I do that? I get up at 5:00 every morning, and I used to get up at 7 every day and hurry and take a shower and go into work, clock in kind of a thing. And I lived a lot of my life that way. If you do the math, if you get up at 5:00, if you typically get up at 7, but if you get up at 5:00, you will create out of that extra 2 hours a whole month in the course of a year, a whole month of you time. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So for 2 hours, and again, I don't get up and work out right at 5:00. I get up and I work on my knowledge. I do my meditation and spiritual study at that time, and I study my business and I study what's happening, and I prepare myself for my day. So by 7:00, I'm ready to tackle the world. And so those 2 hours are pretty sacred to me. Nobody messes with those 2 hours. Unfortunately, it's early enough that nobody really wants to, but it's great. And I have a great routine, and it puts me in the right mindset to tackle everything else for the rest of the day. I've been working, as we talked about, by incorporating some physical activity after those 2 hours, but those 2 hours are all about increasing my spiritual and emotional health, my knowledge.
Yeah, that's great. I've never heard anybody say that 13th month. Was that somebody else, or did you come up with that?
No, I think I came up with it, actually.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
that's really great.
But do the math. It's crazy. Yeah. Like it works out almost perfectly that it creates. And think about that, man. Like a whole month of not wasted time. There's no Netflix time in that whole month. I mean, can you imagine how amazing it would be if you took an entire month and devoted it to one of those chambers of your heart? You know what I mean? Like 24 hours of that day, right? That you just devoted to that thing for a month. That's the power of the 13-month year.
How hard do you work? Are you working like 8 hours of work per day?
Probably not. Yeah. I don't know. I don't measure it. I don't track it super close. And what is work, right?
Right. Yeah.
Am I sitting in front of the computer? Do you take the time of, I'm reading a great book right now, Measure What Matters, fantastic book. Do you count that as work? Do you count your calendar management as work? I don't know. I don't know that I put an hour on it. I have a lot, my kids I don't have a kid in the background like what you do, but my kids are self-contained, right? Like I don't have my kids don't even live here anymore, right? So I have a lot of time. And so there are a lot of days that I'll put in 10, 12, 13 hours. And then there's days that I'll put in 3. And so it is a luxury of being able to be in 100% control of your time. We have a fantastic team at both Dr. Demographics and at TGM. Both of those companies have great teams. And so my business time is really effective and pretty hard hitting. It's not a lot of YouTube watching in my business time.
And that's great. So you brought up Taylor Green Media. So talk to me about the different verticals within Taylor Green Media, kind of briefly. Just give us an idea of like what lives within that world.
Yeah,
and I want to dig in a little bit more on some specific
that's a great question. So we're just a little over a year in.
Yeah.
And how that started was Will came from a world that you're really comfortable with, a fitness, health world. I came from obviously the dental medical space, as well as just general business coaching. And we decided to put those things together. And something that we figured out really well, we were both passionate about content creation and its role in getting business owners' voices into the marketplace. And we found out a really good system to get that done, and a system that's affordable, a system that can be consistent, and a system that any entrepreneur pretty much at any level can do. And so that became the original mission, is getting a business owner's voice, the passion leader of a company, getting their voice into the marketplace on a consistent basis without breaking the bank. And that has grown into lots of different verticals. We started with fitness and dental. That has grown to real estate and law and construction, and then coaches, consultants, because who doesn't need to get their voice in the marketplace? Pretty well everybody. But we personally have a lot of knowledge in those two verticals, and we focus a lot in those two verticals, and we have some magnetism there. So that's the focus. I would love to see us dive into a few other verticals that I think are neglected a little bit. I think that they have an opportunity to do better. I think they have a challenge in that not everybody's super comfortable in front of the camera. And I mean, dentists are a great example of that, right? They didn't go to business to be in showbiz. They didn't go to business to even be a business owner. A lot of times they just love doing what they do.
What do they love?
No, filling and drilling, man. That's what I always say, filling and drilling. No, they are passionate about it, and finding a way for them to gain the confidence of developing a voice is a pretty magical experience that we have. So I would like to go deeper into some of that. I think that there's a lot of engineers-minded people that have great businesses that don't have a voice, and helping them get a voice in their way by understanding their customers and clients is something that I'd like to see us do.
Yeah, my friend Eric Meyer works with like engineers and like chemists that like come up with a product and kind of spin it off into a company. And there's like, you got to teach them about the business side, right? I think what's so great about, Taylor Green Media, but really scaling with media, which is like the wing that does what you're talking about, is I kind of harken back to what you said in the beginning of the show of like, you said some nice things about what we're doing here with our podcast, but really it's the medium. There's this thing where it's like, okay, yeah, if you're in fitness, one of the beauty things of fitness is like nobody gets into fitness not passionate about it. You don't open a gym, particularly like a single location, brick and mortar, CrossFit, yoga, Pilates type studio. You don't open that because you're like, I heard it's a great way to make millions of dollars. No, you do it because you love it, right? And so when you ask that person to put out a promo or something, maybe there's some stage fright, maybe they don't know what the nuts and bolts of it, but they can get it done. What I think is this huge, enormous opportunity that you guys are like ready to dominate with and already really successful at is like, it's the medium of like, hey, you're a roofer. Do you know the 10 things that I should look at if I'm looking to replace, whether or not I need to replace my roof? Great. Well, let's make that video. Let's make those 10 things. And so I think that's where I think the marriage of you and Will, and again, I'm not trying to make this into a commercial. These guys are sponsors and they're our friends, but genuinely, like I believe strongly in the art form. But I think the medium is powerful for anybody. I don't care if you're a hairstylist. I don't care if you repair cars. I don't care if you, like I said, roofing always comes to mind because it's like, does that guy want to get on the camera and talk about it? No, but I'll tell you what kind of competitive advantage do you have if you do have a presence in a space, in a medium that 100% of your clients are taking in, whether that's Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, or even just being able to use it as a sales tool is like, hey, we could talk about it if you want. Otherwise, if you want, here's a link to, a quick 10-part series that kind of goes through exactly how we do it differently than everybody else. Man, you're light years ahead of anybody else that's your competitor, regardless of what industry you're in. And I don't know if you guys can tell out there, but I'm pretty pumped.
Yeah, absolutely. And so cool. It's such an interesting thing because and some industries are a lot more mature in that way than others, right? When I look at real estate, loan officers, like they've been playing this game for a long time, at least the high performers have, right? But you go to the roofers and I'll include dentists with that, right? Because it's a lot the same thing. But both of those things, let's take roofers and dentists, for example. Both of those things require a lot of trust from their consumers to bring them in. I can't help but think of a particular dentist that I worked with. He was a pediatric dentist. What other person needs to have so much trust than a pediatric dentist?
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to fill and drill on me, totally different when I'm taking my kids in, right? Like that doctor better be nice, number one, better be good, number two, and better be really good at following up, number three. And if those three things aren't there, there's no way I, as a father, am going to subject my kids to pain with an ornery dentist, right? I'm not going to do it. And so getting it, again, I go back to a pediatric dentist that I work with, getting him in front of the camera made all the difference because now he utilized the medium to develop trust. And he's a great guy, super gentle, such a kind heart, a true healer. You know what I mean? Like some people are just healers. He is a healer, but it was a lot of encouragement and work and handholding to get him to the place where he could get his voice in the market. When he did, made all the difference in his business and in his practice, because now he had that trust. And in a super competitive market in which he is in, it was easy for him to rise to the top, because it's just a space that's not very mature when it comes to getting their voice out there.
Yeah, if you run a small business in a local area, what regardless of what it is, Google your 10 competitors. And unless you're in, fitness or retail or something where it's like technology has played a big traditional role, you're going to see websites that look like they were made in 1998. You're going to see, follow-up practices that go to dead links. You're going to, I can't I'm trying to make a commitment to not shit on my current hometown now, but it's hard for me to get anybody to come out to the house. It's, got to write checks to everybody. And so it's one of those things where it's like, there's just such a huge opportunity, such low hanging fruit. And I know you guys, because I've been through the process, like this was a 90-day process for me where I learned so much from you guys. And that's why it was really important for me to have you on, because honestly, like, again, these guys are sponsors, but who the fuck is, whatever.
Right.
So to me, it's like, can you, for that person listening at home, can you help somebody who maybe doesn't know about podcasts? By the way, it doesn't have to be a podcast, right? It could be anything within that kind of medium of media, right? That maybe people aren't touching. You guys are pretty well equipped to
absolutely
help, kind of from couch to media, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part is, I think that some people feel like, oh, my business is either too small or too big. We've had a lot of success with both of those areas. And part of that comes from a combined experience of Will and myself with the different worlds that we came from, working with companies, large and small revenue to, or no revenue to huge amounts of revenue, and help create a strategy that was really custom for them, that allowed them to get their voice and their medium out there. And that is a big part of it, right? I mean, we all have these amazing cameras right in our pocket all the time. We all have the technology. It's never been easier to get your voice out there. But the thing that's hard today, and has been hard since cavemen were trying to figure out what to write on the walls, is the strategy. And so I would say our clients are pleasantly surprised when we go through that first strategy session with them, of our ability to take them to whatever that next step is for them. And a lot of times it's just standing up from the couch and deciding, okay, today I'm going to do it. Today I'm going to record it. It's probably not going to be great, but we're going to take what we can, work with what we can, and then you're going to learn a tremendous amount. There's a really funny video that I should send you, Jason. When Will and I first started, and this was years ago when we first started doing stuff together, I pushed him really hard to get on camera. And he's a beautiful man, but he was terrible on camera. It was rough, man. It was rough. And he looks like he's like 12 years old too. It's funny. But Will today, he's pretty good on camera. He's really good on camera. He's better than me on camera. And why? Because he's done it consistently over the course of years. And a journey of 1,000 steps starts with one. And that's where we're at with a lot of our clients. And we take them to whatever that next step is. Make sure that step is as easy as it can possibly be, technology-wise, knowledge-wise, medium-wise, functionality-wise, as easy as it can be, and then help them take step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Skip step 5, because that's the one where people give up. Skip that one, that pitfall, and just move them down their path and get them going to where, frankly, they kind of get addicted to it. And you've probably experienced that. Like once you get over those first little jitters or nerves and you get a little positive feedback, it's kind of cool what happens. You get a little addicted to it. And
I agree, man. I typically like, if there are like, I love that you said skip step 5. If there are like non-negotiables for me, whatever that may be, kind of in whatever direction we're going, like here's one. I always have my feet up when I do this podcast, and my wife and I were setting up the camera and we were setting up the lighting and all this stuff. And she was like, you're going to have to sit up. It looks bad the way you're doing it. And I go, well, here's the thing. I'm going to have my feet up. So we're going to have to figure it out so that it fits, because that's how I sit. And so it just was never, it was just non-negotiable. And so like, I'm like, okay, well, where can we get from there then? And so whatever that means, like, I don't do.
I'll tell you what it means, Jason. What it means is that you're probably going to attract other guys that like to have their feet up.
Maybe. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing, right? Because we tend to attract people that are similar to ourselves, that our natural magnetism is going to attract them. Or that either we relate to on a really emotional level, or that we aspire to be. And go back to Jocko, right? there's a lot of this country, me included, that inspires to be more like Jocko, right? I want to have his drive, his dedication, his 4:30 in the morning Instagram post where it's a sweaty mat. I aspire to those things. And so I can relate to some degree. And it is important. Authenticity is a really important part about getting your voice out there. Because if you're faking it, people can see through that, man. They can see through it eventually, and that does not make for passionate business that you've got to rely on in the hard times.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's I've developed a taste for authenticity that I can't shake. It's like I've gotten to the point. I don't know if it's an age thing or if it's just an experience thing or whatever it is, but I've gotten to the point, and I've mentioned this before, where I'm like 2 sentences in. If you're not authentic, I'm like, I'll actually be like, hey, is everything cool? And then like after that, it's like, I'm out. So there's 2 questions that I ask everybody that comes on the show.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask them to you now. The first question is, if you had access to unlimited capital to profitably grow your current businesses, what would you do? What steps would you take?
I think that I would invest a tremendous amount in my internal people and ourselves. I feel like the world of industry is moving so fast right now that it's a challenge to keep up. There's so many new amazing technologies that are being released every year, right? I mean, we're talking about Facebook ads and TikTok and all of those things, which is great. And you could become an expert in those things, and you need to be. But tomorrow, there's going to be something else that's going to change the world. And you got to be, especially as a marketer, and our moral obligation as marketers is to be on the cutting edge of that thing. And that's hard to do. And I feel like if I, again, had unlimited resources, we would have a research team that did nothing else but be researching, testing, trying new technologies, new methods that we can then get some confidence around to release to our clients.
Yeah, I think, and just to react to that a little bit, I think the mistake would be thinking like, we've got to figure out this new thing. You do, but you guys you corner the market on storytelling. And I think storytelling will always be such an effective,
timeless, absolutely.
Yeah, whether it's developing relationships or selling a product or putting people into the house that fits their needs, whatever it is, storytelling is where you guys can draw a line in the sand if you're really experts at that. And then sure, you hire people that are maybe younger or maybe get it or, understand the technology better or whatever it may be. But man, if you can tell a story and you understand
so much power,
what it means to listen and what the listeners of that story are listening for, I think that's so important. It's something that I'd like to continue to get better and better at, for sure.
I think it's a lifetime journey, honestly. I think that our society is based up on amazing storytellers, and at every level, from business to politics to religion to everything, is based on an ability to communicate a good story and communicate it in a way that has a lasting impact on the listener. And that is a very easy thing to say and a very hard thing to do, and is a craft and a skill that some people are more naturally gifted at than others, but it's something that can be learned. And especially in today's marketplace, is a necessity to learn in order for you to move your business. I think especially for entrepreneurs, which again, if you go back to clinical dentist, that's a big ask. It's a big ask.
Yeah. So the second question that I ask everybody is, if you had to give it all up and you could not continue any of the businesses you currently have or have done before, what do you think you might do? If you had to start something totally new, what do you think that might be?
Yeah, Boy, that's an interesting question. I really get a natural high or a natural kick out of helping someone fix something that's broken in their life. I don't know if this is cheating with this answer, but if I had to walk away from everything that I would do, I would go back to what I used to do. I used to do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people and help them bridge business success with relationship success, with financial success, with emotional and spiritual success. Helping people build those bridges in their own life is something that I feel like that part of my own personal purpose and mission in life, but it's also something that is a gift that I was given that I have an obligation to share. So I would go back to that. Is that a fair answer?
That's a fair answer. That's a great answer.
Good.
I love it. Great. Well, Mike, one last time before we let you go, this has been a really great conversation. I'm so happy that we got on this call.
Thanks for having me on.
Tell us the different things you got going on and how people can find you. We'll also, of course, have the links in the notes below. So shoot, what do you got going on and how can people find you?
I mean, obviously, taylorgreenmedia.com is a great place to go. The voice that we can help you develop for your business, whether you are a successful business that is wanting to find a new voice for this new generation, or if you're on the couch and haven't made $1 and not sure how to take your great idea and build a voice around it, Taylor Green Media is a great place to go. You can find out more about that. We have a podcast, Scaling with Media, YouTube channels, another great place to go. That is something that I feel like nearly every business and entrepreneur that I know needs help with. Would love to have some conversations based around that. If you're a doctor, dentist, veterinarian in that space, professional practice space, maybe you're still in school, wondering where to go next, both strategy and physical location, drdemographics.com is a great place to go. And if you want to hang out with me, just more on a personal level, go fishing with me, that kind of thing. You could look up Mike Green Outdoors on YouTube. I've got a kind of fun little channel there where we do fishing videos and a little bit of hunting and some stuff around the farm. I've got a little 10-acre farm here in southern Utah that we've, as a matter of fact, I've got my Honeybee Acres shirt on right now. That's what our farm's name is. So anyways, just kind of some fun videos there, more of just me and my family, but that's a testament to how interesting this conversation was. I meant to bring up fishing, but man, I got sidetracked with all this interesting content. Well, Mike, thank you so much again for taking the time, and we'll have to have you on again as things develop. Scaling with Media /Spear, selfishly, is where to check them out if you're interested in setting up your own media stuff for your business. Otherwise, Spear and Clover podcast, thank you guys so much. And Mike, thanks again for your time. But thank you, Jason.
Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to show us some love by liking, rating, and subscribing so we can keep making more and better content. If you'd like to support the show and get a great additional content like exclusive shows and even live group masterminds, please head over to patreon.com/Spear and Clover to become a member of the tribe. If you're interested in learning more about how we help entrepreneurs, visit spearandclover.com or message us on any of our platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.